Randy, it is awesome to see you. And we just had a great conversation. Why do people consume and complain?
Because they're just not ready. They think that they want to change, but that actually makes them feel better. But they're also the ones, if you ever come across this, someone reacts strongly to you, something you do or say, and really it has nothing to do about you. It is not personable. They just need to look in the mirror. They're the actual problem.
And it's so easy to consume these days. Like
Mhm.
there's just so much content. There's so many books that are out there and there's so many communities to get involved in and you can just kind of be there and keep taking stuff in. None of it matters until you take action, right? Like you take a step, and then you can get feedback. And it's so I wonder, I wonder if it's a confidence thing. And I know we're going to get into mindset as we go through this. I wonder if it's a confidence thing. I wonder if it's a capability thing. I wonder if it's some insecurity. I wonder if it's something else. But it is that piece of, hey, it's so much simpler for me to tell you what you could be doing or hear what everybody else says I should be doing, but not taking the time and going through that self-reflection and actually getting work done on your own.
And I think it's all part of the stories we tell ourselves, as we come into adulthood, and anyone who kind of goes through a reflection period
Yeah.
comes to the realization that, you know, are the values and who we are they really mine, or is that what I was either conditioned, how I grew up, or, the environment, etc. And and I think for some people they feel stuck. I mean, they're looking, but they're either overwhelmed or they just don't know how to take that first step, or they're just scared. Fear, I think fear caused a lot of paralysis for a lot of reasons and it shows up in different ways. But if I could just use one word, it's fear.
What does fear mean to you?
Fear means excitement. It means
Okay.
this is where I need to grow. But you have to realize that, uh, you know, as a scientist, I was trained to fail, and that's exciting because that meant I was one step closer to that experiment getting right. And being a trained scientist taught me a lot about, like, I don't fear change, or I don't fear failure because part of the process. And when I took that into my personal growth and learnings, it really changes and opens up. But I think a lot of people, it is scary, like no one wants to have egg on their face. But honestly, everyone who has had some type of growth or aha moment, it's because they've leaned into the uncomfortable.
You mentioned scientists. When people think about the scientific method, or
Mhm,
actually, let me back up. When people think about testing and iterating inside their
mhm.
business, what mistakes do they make when applying the scientific method?
First off, looking when you're looking at data, do you have the right data set? As a scientist, I could manipulate the data any way I wanted to if I was, yeah, I know, right? Research grant, like, how am I going to get this? Well, let me exclude these. So, I think it's being honest and looking at the data set and really challenging. Do you have the right data set to make, good decisions? And then, how, what are the key metrics in your business, and what is the ecosystem? I think sometimes, yes, you need to look at the individual metrics, but what does that mean in the ecosystem? I use the word ecosystem, and that's because I'm thinking end to end, for the business process. But I always see that as a big mistake, is not verifying what you're actually looking at in the data. And is this truth? And then how do you prove it? Are they changed too many things at once, or have they given it enough time?
This is why people need more scientists
I
inside their
know. And
organizations.
everyone is like, "How? Why?" And it's because you have this mindset, and, like in an experiment, as an example, you have we call it an incubation period, right? And so, chemicals are mixing, brewing, doing their thing, making the reactions. Well, it's no different in, the go-to market motions. There are certain things that have to, percolate, whether it's you have to give someone time to look at collateral. And if we pull a trigger too soon or say, oh, this isn't working, you might be missing out. And then if you change too many things, how do you know which is the thing that worked? Right. So, you do have to iterate in business, obviously, because revenue generating, you do have to iterate quickly, but you have to be you do have to slow it down enough that you're making the best lever change that you can make based on the data you have and giving it enough time.
Yeah. One of the things that should be clear for folks who've not gotten lost because we started talking about science, and this is science applied to work. Like this works.
Yes.
Isolate for specific variables. When you
Yes.
isolate for those specific variables, which starts to bring math and science together, then you
Mhm.
can know which things you're testing for inside your experiment. You can understand which ones are working, which ones are not. And the key piece there was also let the experiment play out because
Yes.
sometimes the time may take a little bit longer than you expect. Let's talk about your journey. So, where'd you start? And actually, let's talk where you are. Where are you today? What do you do today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm SVP of client engagement at Bessler, and I oversee marketing, sales, and customer success. And we're a healthcare financial services company. So we provide services and software to basically help hospitals either recover revenue or protect reimbursement. Just like you or I file a tax report, so does a hospital.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, I like getting a check, like write a check. So I get to help hospitals, serve their communities and by getting more programs and maybe having different staff, building a building because we're finding dollars and protecting dollars.
Okay. So you've have a really important role inside the organization. You're responsible
Mhm.
for both the demand side, the acquisition side, the retention and expansion side. You've got
Yes.
all parts of how money ends up coming into the organization and grows inside the organization. Where did you start though? Like, have you always been in sales?
No, in fact, true story, clinical lab scientist, did research, worked in labs, worked my way up to director. And when my husband and I got married, he was in sales and he's had his own businesses. And he's like, you should be in sales. And I was like literally, I resisted. And he is my biggest champion. And he's like, no, you could do this. Like, you would be so good at it. You would be so good at it. And I resisted. When we had our kids, I stayed home for a bit and I helped him in his business. And he was like, I told you you were really good at it, but I still resisted. And I was a director, so basically at the top of my game, kind of in my field. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm bored. My cup is not full. Oh my gosh, this sucks. And what am I going to do? And I had an opportunity just by talking to someone and putting it out there. I said, I think I'm ready to leave this. And they're like, hey, there's a startup in North Texas. You need to meet Jessica Landestrate. And I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. They offered me three different roles, at this startup. And I took the one that I had no business taking, which, one was like working in the lab. And I was like, no, I want to do something different. I know I can do that. Been there, done there, got that t-shirt. I
Yep.
said, I really want to be on the commercial side. They're like, well, we have an individual contributor role, so you'll be stepping down. And, but, we have some big goals for the year. I mean, do you think you can, bring in, 1 million, 2 million the first year? I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And I knocked it out of the park. And they're like, okay, can you teach a team how to do this? And I'm like, yes. I've led teams, running a lab, I've led teams. I can do this. I can teach other people because I documented the whole time, Mike.
Cool.
In
Yeah.
healthcare or medicine, if you don't document it, didn't happen. And
Yeah.
I was blown away when I got into the commercial side, the business side. People didn't document. I'm like, what? Like, how do you know what's working? How do you find patterns? How do you teach people? How do you like how do you? I was like absolutely blown away that that wasn't the norm. But I was able to literally in that second year had a team of 10 and we once again knocked it out of the park. When I left that company, it was going to be sold to Quest, which is a big box lab, and we had grown to I think 60 million before Quest purchased us. And I had risen to director of commercial operations, which basically meant I touched every single client. We had over 800 clients, and I was cross-functional. I dealt with, every part of the organization, and that's really like where I got my passion about like this ecosystem and knowing all the different levers in business. And from there, I, you know, reached out to someone on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like fabulous. They had this job, and I was like, I don't think that's what you want. Like, I reached out to the recruiter. I see what you posted,
Yeah.
and I'm like, is this what you're really, really thinking of for this new role in this organization? And we just had this really great conversation. And she's like, you really need to talk to our COO. Talk to him, and he's like, hold, please don't take another role. I'm going to be in Dallas. And that's how I ended up in financial services and tech. Is I came in as a director of client relations, was even though it was a director, it was an individual contributor,
Hmm.
and it was come in, talk to our clients, because I'm very passionate about the customer. But when I talk about customer, it's internal and external. It's everyone.
Good.
Once
Yeah.
again, we're going back to ecosystem, right? And like I said, just talking to customers, you get sales. So VP of sales, exited there, went to healthcare tech, another VP of sales, and then I boomeranged because they had other opportunities, which was to take over sales, marketing, customer success. So
Awesome.
yes,
It's a heck of a journey. Like, and
it
this,
is. It
it's
was fast too.
very cool. So how fast was it?
So I went from, never having done this as an
Yep.
individual contributor.
Yep.
Um, it was 11 years.
Okay. Great.
11 years.
Yeah.
And I think what people need to realize is that the reason it was fast is if I actually look back at myself, I have, first off, everyone's in sales, just say that.
Yeah.
But I have always been doing sales. I just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
My parents have a cattle and wheat ranch, or they had a cattle and wheat ranch. I sold rabbits for food. Please, no one come at me, but if you're a farm girl, you're a farm girl. We also raise gelvies in Western Canada, and people came from all over the world for our animal husbandry program. People can go Google that. We're not going to talk about that. And then I was in service, like retail
Yeah.
and yeah, the service industry going through college. And when I think about it, like when I worked at I think my first exposure like to community and sales was working at a golf and country club.
Okay.
I knew every member's name, I knew every member's number, and it was more than that. I knew their kids' names. Hey, Mike, I know that what you like, so you show up, you sit down. I just bring you because I know after the back nine, this is what you want, right?
Right.
And I bring you that drink. And if you are entertaining for business, I make you look good. So that was like, I was doing this all along. It just didn't realize it. And then when I helped my husband, and I actually, when the kids were home, I ran my own business. I had a jewelry business. I'm a silversmith for fun, but I had a six-figure business that I built and sold. So I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing sales all along, but I resisted the term sales. How's that?
What is a silversmith?
Oh, so someone just works with silver.
Just works
So
with silver. Like, do you heat it up and then combine it with different things, or do
yeah,
you?
so you have a torch. I
Okay.
love I love fire. I also do glass fusing. Once again, I like fire. I'm a little pyromaniac.
All right.
So yeah, not burning houses down or anything, but I love fire. Yeah.
So this arc of kind of figuring out, hey, I've actually been doing sales for a while. Actually, let me ask you this question. How do you define sales? What's your definition of sales?
Sales is just a conversation.
Okay.
We overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Everything happens human to human. And so sales is just a conversation. How can I help you?
Yeah.
And I am a helper by nature. How can I help you? And sales, the reason it's so rewarding is that you can help in a much larger way. It's not just necessarily one to one. You may help the individual person in the organization, but you can transform another organization. And like the reason I got into healthcare initially is because I wanted to help people, right? And now, oh my gosh, I'm not just impacting a single patient, or a practice. I'm impacting communities and patients nationwide because we work with acute care hospitals across the nation. That is pretty heady.
I want to get into the science application of science in your
Mhm.
methods to improve at sales and be comfortable with kind of making this transition into a commercial role, a revenue related role. How did you apply your being a trained scientist to that transition?
Right. So the first thing as a trained scientist is, there's a lot of technical speak, right? But one of the first things that we were taught is how would you tell your mother or your child or your grandmother, how would you explain what you do? Or how would you explain a complex process,
Mhm.
right? And so one of my superpowers is simplifying and the power of three. And I think oftentimes in business and sales in particular, that we overcomplicate things. And I realize sales is more than just a conversation, but at its heart, it is two humans having a conversation. And I'm a huge fan of frameworks because I also believe that in order for everyone to bring their authentic and best selves, that they need to have some, if I can just say, wiggle room, and that's what a framework does. So I like to say, frameworks are part of a playbook. And when you're looking at, your persona and the business and the product you have, the very first thing is learn to talk like the customer talks. Don't use your company jargon. Who cares? And so the first thing is, when I say be customer obsessed, that's where it all starts. Is how can you help the customer? It has nothing. You don't care about me. You don't care about my products. And I say that genuinely because people just want to be seen, valued and heard. And in business, you're helping them either personally, whether it's, have a win by getting a project moved, by having additional revenue or whatever the thing is. But ultimately in business, you're either saving time, like there's some type of efficiency, productivity, or you're saving or creating money in somehow. It's affecting profitability. Those are at its core, just being succinct. So there's the two things. You just build everything around that and keeping that framework so you can have a conversation and really get to the heart of what the customer cares about. And you can't do that without actually understanding what your customer does in their day to day. I mean, if I think one of the reasons I was successful is as I transitioned, I knew my persona. I was on track to be a forensic pathologist and I worked with pathologists all the time. So when I was selling to pathologists, I understood what they did and how they worked and what their pressures were on a day to day. So it was super easy for me to sell life sciences, heme path products to them because I could do their thing and talk to them. And it was no different when I went to the financial services. I was like, first 90 days, how many customers can I talk to?
Right. Yeah. It's one of those mistakes I think a lot of organizations make when they are hiring. They try to hire for industry experience, and the
Mm,
industry experience that they hire for are people who have sold into that
mm,
industry. The industry experience that a lot could benefit from, if you're not hitting your numbers, if you're trying to figure out new ways to
mm.
grow, if you are talking about innovation inside your business, Go to the people who actually have the problem you solve for and find the ones in there who are interested in supporting others who have that same problem,
Yep.
because they can empathize with that customer. They can have that conversation using the language that the customer has. And this works, to Randy's point, both with internal customers and
Hmm.
external customers. So if
Yep.
you're struggling with cross team collaboration, go in there and have a conversation with people inside that team and understand what language they use, not continue to push and enforce your language. How do you think there are, how do you identify someone who's out there in the world who maybe is a scientist or is a teacher or a professional in their profession
Hmm.
who's ready to change, who's looking to change and move into something new, doesn't want to go around the same, been there, done that, earned that same t-shirt that you talked about before? How do you identify those people who are ready for that type of growth?
You know, I think people who are ready for that growth, are vulnerable and say, and are outspoken. First off, they're typically advocates for themselves. And you can identify people who are coachable, right?
Mhm.
And 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 any industry that if you're going to transition, and in sales and just in business in general, everyone has to be coachable, right? That's the way. And if you're not, but that, if you can be coachable, you are teachable and you can learn the industry insights and everything else. I think people sometimes, if they ask for help, you can probe and ask what lights you up, you know, what do you like? Because sometimes people look on the other side. Is it that the grass looks greener over there, or there's a shiny object, or or are you comparing OPO? Like, why do you really want to change? Or, what is it? Because I don't know about you, but I have seen throughout my career, I've brought people into the GTM world, from project management,
Yeah.
from operations, internally, right? I've identified people and borrowed them, but they had certain characteristics. One, they were, personable. They really were insatiably curious. And I saw them being coachable. I saw them speaking up. I saw them, asking these really good questions. Okay, I don't understand exactly what you do, but like, from what I'm hearing, what about this? And I love that, right? That just had this insatiable curiosity. So I think there are like characteristics. And I listened to Janice Gordon give a talk at GTM 23 last year in Nashville about, successful sales traits. And there are certain things that you can look for, right? And just because you've had success before doesn't mean you'll be successful in the future. So if you're looking at a leader, I think that's why some companies gone to trouble, is because, people think they can repeat that. If you're not, as a leader yourself, growing and being and looking at what needs to change and adapt, well, I did it this way, it'll work again. That's no guarantee. Just because you failed, that's also no guarantee you'll fail again. But going back to our original question, because I just had a Texas squirrel moment, sorry. It really comes down to, like I said, certain characteristics, and I feel like I know what good is like for someone who is ripe to change.
Yeah.
They're open to having those conversations, and I give them a homework assignment. If
What
they
kind
don't
of
come back, well, it depends. I mean, everyone's different. Like the one project manager that I brought over into go-to market, I asked them to, as take a part in a client call, and it was a client that we knew really well. So I wasn't worried about anything going sideways, but I wanted to see how they showed up and what they thought about and how they should present their piece. And they totally blew me away because they were so curious that, sometimes we have biases and blind spots, but they thought about things because they went back to some data and listened to some calls and thought about, oh, I wonder if this would apply to this customer. And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, the way that they did this. And they totally embraced the learning. And when we sat down, I'm like, so how did that feel, being in that situation where you're talking? And they're like, I loved it. It was scary. You want them to like it, all these things. I knew they were ready.
Yeah.
because they were open to say all those things, and they were coachable, and they showed me they would do the work. People, if someone isn't going to put in the work or show up to even listen, like they're not ready. They're not ripe for the picking.
Yeah. There are a couple things I'd like to go a little bit deeper into here. And
Sure.
there's the not ready to do the work, not ripe for the picking piece. Like, why might people say, and this might end up relating to the first part of the conversation, but why might people say, hey, I'm ready,
Mm,
but not actually be ready?
I think part of it is it depends on the person, but
Yeah.
I think part of it can be definitely that fear, like we touched on
Yeah.
a little bit earlier. And a lot of things play into that. People get in their head, and it comes down to mindset. If you
Mm.
don't think you're capable of doing something, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
If and so it's not just it's fear, but mindset. Do they think that they're capable of it? Do they think that they are capable of learning that? Like to me, everything is figure outable. I know I don't know all the answers, but I have a network and I have people I can ask, and I don't have no ego. Like who can help me? It's not about title. It's like who can help me? But this is figure outable.
Yeah.
But I think some people are like, oh, I don't have this training, or I've never done that before. Well, what have you done before that is similar to this, right? And if people get in their heads too much, they will talk themselves out of it. But it's still that fear thing, paralysis, imposter syndrome, all those things. But if I could just have one thing, it's got to be mindset.
You you talk about fear,
Hmm.
and you recently rolled out your fearless, or at least you've shared your fearless
Yeah.
framework. Do you mind going through that?
So you can like people can find it on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but the whole point of being fearless is embracing the possibilities and being open. And when I think about mindset and fear, if there's an opportunity that is scary, or that I'm not sure about, taking that moment to why am I scared? Like what is it about this? Because those are the moments for an opportunity for growth. Why do I think I can't do this? And then, looking back at all the things I've done, saying, heck yes, I can. Oh, heck yes, I can. And who do I know who's done this before? Who can I ask? And then I get like excited about how I can do that. And it's also being empathetic and realizing not just for yourself, giving yourself grace when you have these moments, but also others, recognizing in them and encouraging others to be, you know, create an open and safe, vulnerable place where people can share and say, well, I've thought about, okay, great. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. And as a as a as a leader, first of all, leadership is a privilege, and we have an opportunity to really shape and help people, not just ourselves as we continue to grow, because everyone's a work in progress, but as we continue to grow, is making sure that everyone has a space and taking things you've learned or the challenges and sharing those and encouraging others to share their lessons, because that helps build confidence. But confidence is external. If you at your core do not know who you are always going to suffer from things, that voice in your head, whether it is other people's opinions, like making you crazy, thinking you don't know what you're doing, or you're going to listen to that voice. Oh, I can't do that. You have to know who you are at your core, and what you're capable. I literally have a sticky note that says limitless. Everything is figure outable, and I can do this. But how can I instill that in others? It's encouraging them to open up and face and really talk about what scares them. And oftentimes it's it's because they are focused on self-confidence, helping them drive versus self-worth. Like you have some work to do. A couple of my favorite books are like The Artist Showing Up, Brené Brown, The Gift of Imperfection, because in the Year of Yes, Shonda Rhimes, you really got to lean in and embrace those opportunities and take off, if I had to take off my glasses, take off those blinders. People talk about rose-colored glasses or a horse with blinders. There are so many opportunities around you, but if you don't put yourself out there and self-advocate and talk about them, no one knows. I personally said, I want to get up on stage and speak. I'm writing a book. How do I get to talk to more people? Because I think that my purpose is to really inspire people, and transform because you are capable of anything. Why not me? you know um and since I've done that podcast like this, and other people have connected me with public speakers,
Yeah.
all because I stepped out there. And so I keep sharing stuff like that as an example. This is how it's done. You have to put yourself out there. And so I hope people go check that framework. It was for leaders, budding leaders, but it all comes down to mindset and being able to embrace that you are a work in progress. You are going to fail, but if you can share those learnings and share your vulnerability and find ways to really know who you are at your core and have that self-worth, the world is your oyster.
And when you do it, like Randy did, you'll find that others will come together
Hmm.
to help support you, lift you up, work through different things. Everything is figure outable, as Randy said, if you're open to working through the process to figure it out. And if you don't have a process, go talk with people who do have a process and then start working that process. There's always a process, whether it is designed or it happens organically, there's always some kind of process that you go through. And I think the simple way to look at it for someone who says, hey, I'm not process oriented, think about how you go to the grocery store. You likely follow the same steps each time you go out of the house to
Hmm.
get to the grocery store. You likely follow the same route each time you go to the grocery store. You probably park in the same area when you go to the grocery store, and you end up going through the same doors when you go to the grocery store. Or at least you do it more often in a
Hmm.
specific way than in just this random way. It's not
Yeah.
like when I'm going to the grocery store, I don't decide to go left out of my driveway. It adds time. Like
Mhm.
right out of the driveway is the way to do it. Be intentional about the way that you act on that. What do you think?
I love that you went there because the other book I was going to like mention is, is being intentional with your habits, right? For the compound effect. And James Clear book, and I just blanked on the title. Oh
Atomic
my God.
habits. Atomic
Thank
habits.
you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
literally just blanked. I'm like,
That's
oh,
okay.
but you're absolutely right. We don't realize sometimes the habits we formed,
Yeah.
but actually being mindful and reflecting. Like I journal every day, and part of
Okay.
my journal is like a habit tracker. And
Cool.
then there are habit trackers online. I mean, just Google. If anyone wants one, I have one that it has some things and you can customize it. Reach out to me. I'll share mine. But you have to look at yourself as a whole person, the 360, right? It's your health, it's your mind, it's your family, it's your profession, it's your finances, it's everything. And Tony Robbins, and I think probably other people have done this, he puts it like on a wheel, and there was like 8 different sections.
Yeah.
Um, and if you think about it, if any one of those sections is you don't have good habits in that area, like maybe your health,
Yeah.
well, then the wheel gets wobbly. And if it's more than two, it's like clunk, 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 right? And having focus and clarity on what you need to do to move yourself forward, I think is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And the only way that you can do that is if you give yourself some space and time. do whatever you need to do that fills your cup. Like for me, I like to walk my dogs, get out in nature. They make me laugh. And it gives me that space and I can come back and journal for 10 minutes a day and just let it free flow. And I see those things. Oh, this is what's going on in my mind. And maybe not, maybe today is not the day to tackle this one thing because I feel this has come up now. I need to deal with this. But being focused and intentional, if you have a goal, is key. And sometimes I think people get stuck on the goal. You are better off creating habits that what do I need to do if I want to earn more money? Well, if you're in sales, we know all the XYZ things you need to do. But if we applied that intentionality to everything that we do in all the different areas of our life, I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I will operate with intention, as
Yes.
Randy just went through. What you talked a little bit about kind of rule of three and organizing around threes
Hmm.
earlier. So let's go into that and just kind of break down a piece around getting comfortable with change
Hmm.
and transition as you either move into a new role or you move into a new organization or you're bringing somebody else along. Just take either of those arcs. What are three things that you would think about or organize work or organize actions around to help support either that transition for self or helping somebody make the transition on their own?
Right. So let's say I want to transition or someone wants to transition into something where they have transferable skills. The first
Yep.
thing I would say is one is have you listed out your transferable skills and thought about like go look at some whether it's job descriptions, for the companies that you want to work out that excite you, that you think are cool, or even the people that you want to work for, the company they're at. What is it that is intriguing to you, and how are your skills going to apply? And actually write that out. Like, okay, I've done this, but I could apply it in this way too, X. And then the next thing is in looking through those, what gaps do you have? What might you need to learn? You know, Nowadays, like I have an advanced research degree, but nowadays, what you can get for basically free or very little money on the internet is like there is no excuse for anyone. I'm telling you, there is no excuse for anyone. So educate yourself. True story. I got a 50K raise once from reading one book. My husband said to me, "What happens if you read more books, honey?"
Yeah. Awesome. What
So
was the book?
don't laugh. It was Fred Reichfeld. It was The Ultimate Question. It was all around NPS, but it really sparked some ideas in me. And I pitched something to a company and I pitched myself all because of this one book. And I literally gave myself a 50K raise
Perfect.
for
Where's
1999.
That's awesome. Well, it's like the Gretzky quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't
Yes,
take, you don't
yes,
ask, you don't get. Or Michael Scott, he stole Gretzky's quote in The Office, but like, ask the questions. It's amazing what will
yes,
happen when you
yes.
ask.
Yes, and I'm so happy because, of course, I'm originally from Edmonton, so squirrel moment, the one is Gretzky. So, anyways, that makes me so happy. And then the third thing is talk to people. Actually, call up and say, "Hey, you're doing what I want to do, not selling anything. I know you're probably busy, but I genuinely," and share with them, you know, am I on the right track? Because I have found for me, and if people approach me that way, I want to help people, right?
Right.
And the worst thing that can happen is someone says, "No, I'm too busy, don't have time." But and that's another way that community can help as well, right? That you could join a community where those people hang out and do it that way as well. I mean, back in the day, we didn't have the virtual online stuff. So once again, Mike, no excuse.
No, no excuse. The If someone is intentional
Hmm.
when they ask a question of me, I will absolutely make time for
Yes.
them. And I think we've got to help people get more comfortable asking those questions, knowing who to ask, where to ask, And again, this is where community really can play
Yep.
a huge role. You triggered me though.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. You said, I'm not selling anything. Why would you say I'm not selling anything when reaching out to somebody?
Well, I think some people do that because they think that they're not comfortable themselves about what they're asking,
Yeah.
and that tells me that there needs to be some work in how they're asking, right? So that's why that's how I think about it, is that people aren't comfortable if they say that. They don't feel good for whatever reason, so they bring it up. Once again, we talked earlier about the mirror. There are so many things, like literally, I just like in my mind, I'm like, I wish I had a mirror because like I just want to hold it up because yeah.
It's so, and the reason it triggers me is because
Mhm,
I think there's this view that people have, which
mhm,
is, hey, people are going to be more open to talking with me if I'm not
mhm.
selling anything. You don't need to say that. A lot of times
No.
the selling piece comes up
Mhm,
with your preconceived notions. And
mhm,
this is really for those people who are looking, if you're out there saying, hey, I'd like to talk with someone around this and I
mhm.
don't know how to reach out, know that people out there genuinely want to help, typically want to help people solve problems. They want to
Right,
help people. They don't wake up and say, I want to destroy things or I want to break
right.
things or I want to make things really difficult. They want to help. And if you start to shift your mindset around what sales is, to sales is about helping others, serving
Mhm.
others, like we've talked about a little bit before. It's problem solving at its core. It's connecting
Yes.
the dots between problems that are known and unknown and solutions that are known or unknown. And when you go through the problem solving, you have to ask certain questions. And when you ask certain questions of people, you're actually doing research, conducting research of individuals. And now it becomes much more comfortable to have the conversation that Randy talked about early on when we started this discussion around what is sales. It's about a conversation. That conversation starts with questions, not with sharing opinion and then
Mhm.
asking people what they think, but starting with questions and gaining their perspective. And when you're open to that perspective, then really magical stuff comes up. So, Brandy, thanks for triggering me with the I'm not selling something. And you got the conversation that everybody gets when they say that to me.
Yeah, well, and it's just funny because, I think like when I read the book Andy Paul's Sell Without Selling, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that is so me because I that's how I am," right? And but so many times people reach out to me, I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I'm like, "Why would you?" And I honestly, I'm like, why would you even start that way?" Like I literally coach them. Why would you even do that, right? And because it's a conversation, because it is a conversation, you want to have a conversation, you really need to be, like you said, intentional and finding ways to deliver value. I always talk about, thinking about relationships,
Yeah.
being intentional. I always think about the Bank of Randy. Does Bank of Randy have $1 million deposit with Mike?
Mm.
If not, I'm not asking for anything. Now, it's different if you come to me because you want to help me, but like I'm not gonna ask you until I have given some value to you.
Mm.
And that's my mindset. And that's for, that helps with that long-term thinking or, long-term thinking and being intentional that I want to build a relationship and I want that relationship to last. I don't want this to
Yes.
be a one-time transactional. This is not transactional.
No. Yeah. Life's not transactional,
No,
right?
no.
Randy, this has been an awesome conversation. We've covered a wide range of things. I mean, we've moved through the arc of making the shift from scientist to sales professional, sales leader, revenue leader inside an organization. We've talked about the importance of mindset and how to think differently about the way that you build capabilities on the mindset side and reinforce that importance of being open to learn. Thank you very much for the time. Where would you like people to go and connect with you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. Connect with me and send me a message.
Awesome. If you know somebody who would enjoy this podcast, get value out of it, please share it with them and let Randy and I know via LinkedIn. When you share the podcast, it helps amplify this message and get the message out to the people who are looking for it. Sales is a thinking process, business is a thinking process, life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?